Let's watch Texas Senator Ted Cruz embarrassing himself in his attempts to not only defend Trump's latest bizarre and unqualified cabinet pick, Kash Patel, of whom MAGA now has to try and run defense for because, of course, Trump can do no wrong in the eyes of MAGA, as the checks and balances Congress is supposed to provide is, of course, gone, but also Ted Cruz trying to defend Trump's agenda and just his cabinet as a whole. So let's watch what he personally thinks about all of the madness.
We've seen 4 years of an invasion at our southern border. And let me ask you, Major, why hasn't Joe Biden done this? Why hasn't Joe Biden actually stood up and used leverage to secure the border? And the reason is Joe Biden and the Democrats wanted this invasion to happen. And I got to say, this is a promise that I believe President Trump is going to deliver on and deliver quickly. We are going to secure the border. This is about using leverage to get Mexico and Canada to cooperate.
I don't get this part because Biden and Harris did try to do something. They tried to do something on the border their very first week. So this is just a blatant lie, right? They tried to pass the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021. This died in committee because Senate Republicans said it was dead on arrival. And of course, Democrats in the Senate didn't have 60 seats to beat the filibuster. So they tried to piece it into the American Rescue Plan to pass it bipartisanly again. And Republicans threatened to kill COVID relief if they included this. So they couldn't get it passed. And also the crossings began to spike under Trump about halfway through 2020. This is after also spiking to 1 million in 2019. So I don't know why, if he didn't at all secure the border the last time, and the problem we're speaking of right now started and was created under him, why would we think he's the guy who's going to end it? I mean, crossings are already down 75% this last year, and MAGA will give no credit for this to Biden, but watch how fast they'll all say, like, look at these great crossing numbers, and it's all good because of Trump, and I'm calling it now. This is exactly how it's going to happen. What we should really be asking is, why did Republicans prevent immigration legislation at all costs the last 4 years if it's such a huge issue? Oh, well, we don't have to ask that because the answer is obvious, because it's just a political talking point for them.
Kash Patel, suggested by President Trump as the new leader of the FBI. How enthusiastic are you about that?
Listen, I think Kash Patel is a very strong nominee. I think the entire slate of cabinet nominees President Trump has put forward is very strong. I believe every one of these cabinet nominees is going to be confirmed by the Senate. I think Kash Patel is going to be confirmed by the Senate.
So I want to actually talk about Trump's cabinet as a whole here, because it's hilarious how MAGA faked this huge outrage at the Biden crime family. And, Biden got a position on the board in Burisma just because he's Hunter Biden's son. And that's wrong. That's so unethical. And it's this huge violation. And, we have to go after Biden for it. We have to go after all of this. And we have to call out Hunter. Now, if we look at Trump's cabinet, however, Ivanka, Trump's daughter Ivanka, her father-in-law, Charles Kushner, is now Trump's ambassador to France. This is a man who was federally prosecuted essentially for paying a prosecutor to sleep with his brother-in-law on camera so he could then blackmail him into making a deal. And Trump pardoned him for this, by the way, in 2020. If for the MAGA who's mad that Joe Biden pardoned Hunter, well, Trump also pardons his family who commits crime. So for this and tax evasion and other crimes as well. And his daughter, Tiffany Trump, right? Her father-in-law, Mossad Boulos, sorry if I mispronounced the last name, he's now the senior advisor to Arab affairs. No experience doing envoys or any kinds of things like this in the field. And again, despite their fury at Hunter Biden, despite Hunter actually having previous board experience when getting picked for the Burisma board, so it not even really qualifying in the same way for him, MAGA won't have any anger for these picks at all. They also said Trump's going to drain the swamp, but they'll have no problem with his picks like Mike Waltz, Mike Huckabee, or having billionaires, the richest man in the world, having his thumb on regulations for workers and consumer policies. Like, who cares? As long as it's owning the libs, it counts as draining the swamp for MAGA.
The FBI and the Department of Justice are two institutions incredibly important to the rule of law in the United States. I revere both. And one of the most tragic consequences of 4 years of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is both DOJ and the FBI have been politicized and weaponized. And I think Kash Patel is a very strong nominee to take on the partisan corruption in the FBI.
I mean, this is just hilarious, right? You can't live in reality and believe this, but this is just where MAGA is at. They have to say this kind of stuff to rectify nominating and then electing someone with 88 felony charges, 34 felony convictions, liable for sexual assault, liable for fraud, like liable for defamation. Because if we look at this unbiasedly, right? Trump committed one of the most horrendous acts of trying to thwart our democracy that we've ever seen in this country. He actually tried to steal an election. He utilized fake electors to subvert the will of the voters. He insurrected a mob to pressure Mike Pence to accept those fraudulent electors. We know he did this because he admitted it and said he just needs immunity for it. And he then tried to pressure state officials and his AG and his DOJ to all go along with the scheme. And what happened as a result of this, right? The DOJ twiddled their thumbs and hesitated about going after him for 4 years, to the point that they never even got around to it, to actually taking him to trial for any of it. But if we look at like Democrats, for instance, the last 4 years, Bob Menendez was swiftly prosecuted and called on to resign by Democrats. Hunter Biden, who isn't even actually political himself, was swiftly prosecuted. Joe Biden, swiftly prosecuted for something that no normal citizen would be prosecuted for. By the way, this was strictly political. Joe Biden faced more investigation and scrutiny for documents than Trump did. And Trump literally bragged on audio about having them, about lying to keep them, lied to the FBI and moved to try and hide them. Eric Adams, a Democrat, being swiftly moved through the legal system and prosecuted and being called on to resign by Democrats. Like, under a left administration, the left has been prosecuted at 10 times the speed and rate that Trump has. But because grand juries, which are composed of everyday Americans, have found the preponderance of evidence to be enough to charge Trump, just charge him, we have to believe that the FBI and the DOJ are politically motivated and being targeted against Trump. I mean, it's so nonsensical of a conspiracy at its surface that it's wild to even believe it. And it gets even better when you learn that the FBI is ran by Christopher Wray, a lifelong conservative who was handpicked by Donald Trump to run the FBI. But he, of course, is like now just in on this deep state Democrat conspiracy, and Trump, didn't know what he was doing when he picked him. Like, this is how far into the weeds you have to go to connect the dots for all this nonsense that MAGA believes. Yet they'll turn around and tell you that a 5-star general coming out and saying, hey, Trump called veterans at a cemetery suckers and losers, that isn't believable, despite him literally calling John McCain a veteran, who's also a veteran, calling him a loser on TV because he got captured, right? It's this insane double standard that MAGA has to indulge in, right? And I'm just saying, like, this, it has to be tiring to keep up, right? Right, MAGA? Like, does it ever get tiring?